Hello and welcome to the X Factor podcast. I'm your host, Charles Epstein. Today's guest is uniquely qualified to answer the question, how can we ensure that AI doesn't leave a body count in its wake? I always wanted to do a Tarantino-themed pod, and I guess this is the closest I'm going to get.
Yeah,
anyway,
this is where the Sopranos meets artificial intelligence.
Okay. Excellent. Maybe if we have time at the end of this conversation, I have an anecdote about exactly that. Anyway, so how's that for a cliffhanger? And I haven't even formally introduced you, Steve.
So I am Steve Levy. I am a principal talent advisor with DHI. The acronym stands for Dice Holdings. We are the company behind dice.com, clearancejobs.com. Been around for 30 years. It was 1994 when Dice turned the lights on, and historically, it's always been a very, very good place to find people with supreme technical skills. Clearance Jobs was an acquisition. You can find supreme people with many different levels of clearance. And this is, 2024, 2023, 2022 to current has really been a challenging year for the TA tech stack. We have, companies gone out of business, companies merging, every company claiming to have AI in their products.
Mm-hmm.
And, we really are at that paradigm shifting point where, no different than the industrial age, no different than when we brought personal computers into the organization, when we brought the internet into the organization, when we survived Y2K and the world didn't come to a screeching halt because computers couldn't handle a certain date. We all managed to survive. And, each paradigm shift brings with it fear, loathing, excitement, innovation, brings creativity bubbling up that we've never seen before. Jobs disappear, new jobs appear. That's the nature of the beast.
Yes.
This one, though, smells a little different to me because of the frequency with which it's been discussed, good, bad, and ugly, on social media, in the media, everywhere. There's so much fear behind everything that's related to AI. I think primarily because people don't really understand it. The investment community likes to see things like, companies say, look, we've just launched a new AI platform, and their stock goes up.
Sure.
It's all speculation.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's the thing that we need to address first and foremost when it comes to AI right now. Like Warren Buffett lamented years ago how the stock market changed from being an investment platform to a speculation platform.
Mm.
And when something that important, becomes, a speculation platform, a speculation tool, interesting decisions are going to be made. About companies,
Right. And I think
about company leadership.
Yeah. I think you really nicely just dove right in and framed the conversation we're going to have. And by the way, I just want to back up a second. I just want to make it very clear when I use body count, I'm using it figuratively. We're talking about a body count in terms of jobs, social equity, or at the extreme end in terms of the existential risk it may pose. And what's interesting is the previous podcast I had with David Foote of Foote Partners, he also brought in, this historical perspective, talking about this being the fourth industrial revolution. And he was also pretty positive, saying that the benefits and net benefits, will outweigh some of the troubling or concerning things. I'm not sure you exactly are there, and all of that is also very much subject to change because this whole thing is moving so fast.
I mean, the frequency with which the pivoting that takes place. One bad quarter, that didn't make our revenue numbers. We're going to have to pivot to something else. Pivoting has become the new let's stick this out. We'll tough it out. We're just going to pivot away. We'll find something else. Hopefully that'll stick. That's a different brand of leadership than you and I experienced growing up in our early professional years.
By the way, I just want to come back to that Warren Buffett point. And I think it comes down to the democratization of information, where it becomes more speculative because you have more people getting into the market who are not quote unquote professionals, which isn't to say that there aren't people who come in who don't have skills and et cetera, et cetera. But, all of a sudden they're tools, they have access to data, and they could day trade, and it sort of changes the dynamic and the tenor and the nature of the market. I think that goes for AI today as well. These tools are freely available, and that gives rise to a whole lot of problems. And we've touched on this in previous podcasts, not least if you are, the CIO, CTO, you just don't know who's using what. And there are a lot of other issues that I think emerge from the democratization of AI. And we can sort of get into that. But, I also wanted to take a step back first. What's interesting, you talk about pivot. Before that, you used paradigm shift. And paradigm shift was the basis of our very first conversation sometime back, getting into the actual genesis of it with Mr. Kuhn. I believe it is Thomas Kuhn.
Ironic you should say Genesis, and we also talked about inherit the wind. So
yes, I did promise to give you an opportunity on this pod to do a dramatic reading of Inherit the Wind, but I kind of want to build to that, Steve. So yes, our first conversation was about the origins of the concept, actually, of paradigm shift. And the next conversation, it turns out that we're both Long Island guys. I want to say born and bred, but I was born actually in Brooklyn, lived my first several years there. But afterwards,
my condolences. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Long Island. We found out we're both from Long Island. But then I told you that while I've been down here in South Florida for 24 years, I lived all of my life previously there. And my last place of residence before coming down here was Wantagh. And I said, I usually tell people Wantagh is known for three things. One of the best, if not the best, bicycle store in the South Shore of Long Island, at least the South Shore. Number two, and we can get back to this later in the conversation, it is the final resting place of the most famous canine in presidential history, American presidential history. And number three, of course, it's where Jones Beach is. I lived in Wantagh for about 2 years, so I kind of had that kind of attachment to Jones Beach. But I know your attachment to Jones Beach is a lot deeper than that, Steve.
It is. I was a Jones Beach lifeguard for 34 summers and made literally thousands of rescues. Since you're from Wantagh, so my field was Field 6. It was the easternmost field on Ocean Parkway associated with Jones Beach that wasn't destroyed by a hurricane back in the 70s. That would have been Field 9. But Field 6 is always one of the busier beaches. We have, within the Jones Beach system on Long Island, we have Jones Beach, we have Robert Moses, which is by Fire Island. We have Sunken Meadow up on the North Shore. We have Heckscher State Park. We have Montauk Downs. We have Hither Hills. I'm probably going to miss something. Wildwood out by Riverhead. Probably, these are my best friends. I mean, I was at the beach Sunday for the last day of the summer, and one of the children of one of the guards I've known for 46 years, I was at their wedding. I was at my friend's wedding and his wife's wedding. This was his oldest child, is now brought her new daughter in, and I looked at her daughter and going, my gosh, she looks just like you. I held you when you were that young. So it's a family. We have
Sure.
people, all of us. We've been to each other's weddings. We've been to We've seen kids be born. We've held kids born. Many of these kids have become lifeguards too. We've been to funerals. We've been to weddings. It's a lifelong love affair with the ocean and the beach. Talk about performance based. It's a pretty binary metric. You got to save people, or you don't.
Or you don't.
And the don't part is, for us, it's an immutable fact of the ocean. People who have a hard time swimming will often get into trouble, and they will often drown.
This sounds like it has the makings of a book.
Oh, people have written books. A guard, Ron Colby, did a video called The Jones Beach Boys.
But I'm talking about a book where you talk about your experience and how it informs maybe your work.
People have done that. I mean, I suppose anybody can relate their early work years. Not the working in a profession that is not where they are now, and find elements of it that form your structure. Because
but doing what you did, I mean, I'm sure there are some scintillating stories, edgy of the seat stories, stories.
You're not old enough to hear these stories, Charles. No, it's like Fight Club. You don't talk about Fight Club.
Okay.
Although when we get amongst ourselves, we kind of call ourselves environmentalists because we kind of recycle the same stories decade after decade, and they get funnier as we tell them decade after decade. But no, there are things that we've done. There are things that, I mean, for example, if LinkedIn were around when my younger years in my 20s, I most certainly would have had a profile picture front and side view. Some of the things that we did were outrageous. Nothing illegal, immoral, or fattening, but they were still outrageous.
Right. Oh, it's kind of good to know, interesting to know that there's sort of an omerta among lifeguards.
Yeah, not really. There are plenty of folks who, my class of 77, all of us are very good friends. I mean, this is a brotherhood and a sisterhood unlike no other I've ever known. The closest, military is the same way, to be honest. First responders. We have lifeguards who are NYPD or FDNY. It's the same thing. Lifeguards, we can go into a person's house or a precinct knowing that they're there and we're welcome as one of the family. I have a lot of injuries that have taken place, getting slammed, getting stitches, you name it. I would do them all over again with no regrets. That's my story.
Yeah, we can completely go down this rabbit hole, but we probably should not. So, and then most recently, in our conversation leading up to this, preparing for this, you were suddenly overcome with the need to wax poetic, and you quoted from the famous courtroom scene from Inherit the Wind. I hope you don't mind me putting you on the spot.
I don't mind.
So you can do a dramatic.
So I can do a dramatic. I want to set the stage. Inherit the Wind was one of the books we had to read in high school. It was about this, we call it the Scopes monkey trial, where evolution was put on trial. Tennessee in the 1920s or 30s, a little bit foggy on that one. I should have checked ahead of time. And the entire book and the movie starred Spencer Tracy. They don't make actors like Spencer Tracy.
No, anymore. They do not.
He played Henry Drummond, the attorney who was defending Scopes, the protagonist who taught evolution as school. And on it, his foil was Matthew Brady, a highly religious person. And I'll read a little bit here. And really this goes to the connection to AI, I think, should be, and where we are now, what AI portends to do is clear. But the whole scene led up to Matthew Brady, who was, highly religious, stuck to the Bible. There was no wiggle room. And he asked Henry Drummond, is it possible that something is holy to the celebrated agnostic? And here we go, Drummond, Henry Drummond goes, yes, the human individual mind. In a child's power to master the multiplication table, there is more sanctity than all your shouted amens and holy holies and hosannas. An idea is a greater monument than a cathedral, and the advance of man's knowledge is a greater miracle than all the sticks turned to snakes or the parting of the waters. But now are we to forego all this progress because Mr. Brady now frightens us with a fable? Gentlemen, progress has never been a bargain. You have to pay for it. Sometimes I think there's a man who sits behind a counter and says, all right, you can have a telephone, but you lose privacy and the charm of distance. Madam, you may vote, but at a price. You lose the right to retreat behind the powder puff of your petticoat. Mister, you may conquer the air, but the birds will lose their wonder and the clouds will smell of gasoline. Darwin took us forward to a hilltop from where we could look back and see the way from which we came. But for this insight and for this knowledge, we must abandon our faith in the pleasant poetry of Genesis. Brady goes, we must not abandon faith. Faith is the most important thing. Drummond finishes with, then why did God plant us with the power to think? Mr. Brady, why do you deny the one faculty of man that raises him above other creatures of the earth, the power of his brain to reason? What other merits have we? The elephant is larger, the horse is swifter, the butterfly is far more beautiful, the mosquito is more prolific. Even the simple sponge is more durable. Or does a sponge think? That was wild. When I read that, and I knew I must have been 14 when I read it for the first time, and I believe I've read the book easily 10 to 12 times through the years because it's just one of those good things that it reveals more when you get to it. And we're sort of that way with AI. AI is scary to us. I think we can probably thank Arnold Schwarzenegger for that. Terminator, Skynet.
Yeah.
And
Arthur C. Clarke didn't help either.
Let's go back to Ray Bradbury in Fahrenheit 451. Let's go back to Isaac Asimov in the Foundation trilogy. Let's go back to Ayn Rand, Atlas Shrugged. I mean, these are, the irony is it's this creative mind that developed these stories, these visuals, these things that scare the crap out of people. But that's what a good writer does. A good writer, creates emotion in you. It unleashes. They unleash with their words things that are there. But then it comes back to the human mind to determine is that real or not. It goes back to FDR. We have nothing to fear but fear itself. And I think that's where we are with AI. There's so much fear in it that it's going to, tease away our humanity. It's going to obviate the need for emotional intelligence, to obviate the need for a human connection. We've already seen, dating, swipe left, swipe right. The courtship. Where is that? Now there are reasons behind why it's a little tougher these days, but shortcuts aren't always better cuts.
For sure. Also, I wrote a piece for our newsletter, the X-Files, about automation bias. One of the problems with that, when you give yourself over to these tools, it sort of dulls your cognitive faculty.
It can. It's like, thinking a long time ago on Long Island, back in the days where the Stanford Benetti IQ test was a big thing. For better or for worse, I was with 20 or so other 10-year-olds or 11-year-olds. We were put into a grade. We did fifth grade and sixth grade in 1 year. And our teacher is a guy named Bill Harper, lives in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. Probably one of the most influential people I've ever had in my life next to my parents. We were being stupid 11-year-old, 10-year-old, what a surprise, stupid and 11-year-olds. And, he was trying to teach us to think about solving problems. And he goes, I'm now the emotion I've lost, but the line was, do you kids believe that thinking causes mind pollution? And I think there are many people these days who are afraid to think. They'd rather just have it given to them, or just, it's good enough,
Or just it's mass confirmation bias.
Maybe it's kind of,
path
that's
of
what it
least
is.
resistance. Find people who validate and support me and my views.
I think that's a lot of what goes on. It's being an individualist and thinking for yourself can be scary, lonely, but exhilarating too.
Right. It's sort of like doctor shopping. You're shopping for your cohort for various things that are interesting to you.
Yeah.
Let me just bring this and focus this conversation on jobs. Okay. And, we'll get into some of these other things, of course. Where do you come down on the net effects of AI on jobs? Is the past prologue, as we were discussing a little bit, will we adjust, or is AI different? As you said, it sort of smells different or feels different. And if so, what are the implications? And getting back to our theme, or Tarantino-esque theme, how high will the body count be?
Well, let's see where AI is being injected into this hiring process. That's first thing. There's a saying: if it's written in Python, it's machine learning. If it's written in PowerPoint, it's AI. Almost, I cannot think of off the top of my head. I'm sure there are some company that is in the talent acquisition tech ecosystem that isn't using we have AI in our platform and our product and our service. Why it sells. I mean, let's be honest. Sure. CEOs are asking for it.
AI inside.
AI. We got it's like the Intel inside. We have AI inside. Absolutely. But let's look at where it's been getting the greatest amount of heat. That's on the job seeker side, and maybe not the greatest. It's 1A and 1B, and I'll let you choose which you want to go first. But 1A is there are now platforms that allow people to apply to hundreds of jobs at one time, and it'll generate. It'll look at the job description. It'll send out some custom stuff, and so let's look at that's the process of throwing something against the wall and hoping something sticks. Okay, let's look at the damage of that one. On my side, on the company side, all of a sudden, I'm seeing these applies. Many of them sound the same. It's like my brother-in-law's a teacher at a Catholic school, and he's seeing English papers that all look the same. And they're coming from people who have real dubious writing skills, but they're writing War and Peace. Mm-hmm. But from a job seeker standpoint, so I'm seeing all these things that look alike, they sound alike, and now my inbox is the number of the applicants is just swelled. I like where I am. Everybody gets eyeballs. Everybody gets eyeballs on their resume. It's just the way it is, and there are ways to do that don't require AI yet. Because, ultimately when it comes to the hiring process, if I move upstream before I dive into the impact of it is companies do a really poor job of writing job descriptions. Job seekers do pretty poor jobs of writing resumes. What possible good can come of that when then they're just knocking? It's a negative, times a negative doesn't equal a positive when it comes to jobs.
But in fairness to AI, and obviously we need to be fair to AI, those are things it could probably do very well.
How?
Write you a good job description and maybe help write a good resume.
Well, how do garbage in, garbage out? What are you going to use? And I'm putting you on the spot. How do you propose for AI to write a better job description? What's missing from the existing ones? People are coming up with these platforms who don't know, the underlying stuff. It's like we're essentially just automating stupidity in many cases. So but I'm not here to bury Caesar. Look at where ultimately what is the goal of hiring. The ultimate goal of hiring is to bring on people who can solve specific problems, who can succeed in specific situations. And this is it's a rhetorical question. How often do job descriptions offer the specific initiatives, epic story points if it's tech, specific scenarios, scale, scope, what types of results are desired in a job description? Rarely. Now, if you can, as a TA professional, use these tools, for example, before your intake, your intake and discovery call, use ChatGPT to analyze industry trends, company trends, the people, hiring managers, online presence, and put these into a document that at least serves as the starting point for a discussion, because you want your hiring manager not to say, well, just let's use the same job description as last time. No, we use the same garbage job description as last time. We're going to get the same results. You remember how long it took. Mm-hmm. We have to be better. We have to focus on, hiring has to focus on performance and not making things pretty. Who's your favorite author, Charles, for example?
That changes, but I'm going to go with Norman Mailer.
So let's say you use a chat GPT, for example. I like it. I pay the $21.53 a month. It's a time saver. Doesn't give me stuff. It really gives me things I don't know, but it does help me compress things.
If I should have gone with Philip Roth, by the way. But
okay, well, let's go with Philip Roth. He wrote some. My mother liked Philip Roth.
Okay, let's go with Philip Roth.
But what if? And what was I can see the cover of the book, likely in the 70s. What was this? There was a book from the 70s.
Well, Portnoy's Complaint was
Portnoy's Complaint. Thank you for that one.
The big one.
So what if I'm know that I need to write a message to you? I need to engage you. People are being job seekers. People whom we covet are being slammed by crappy messaging. I mean, just the most galactically stupid messaging. And so let's say a normal person runs, write me a message for Charles for this job as a, chief revenue officer. And it'll be the same stuff nothing will differentiate it. But I know that Charles likes Philip Roth's Portnoy Complaint. So I'm going to say, write a message in the style of Philip Roth's Portnoy's Complaint, and I'll add some things to it. So you'll read it, and presumably you're going to read it, and you're going to go,
what maniac sent this to me?
What crazy, bald, tattooed idiot sent me this? But then, it's things like that. That is, I've said this enough over the last couple of months, the more inhumanely we treat people, the greater the likelihood it will be replaced by a non-human.
Let me ask you another sort of related question, which sort of goes to this. When we talk about AI being human-centric, specifically when using it to assess people, it's, ensuring that it's transparent, you're mitigating bias, it's fair. How can we ensure that AI used in the hiring process is all those things?
Well, first and foremost, ahead of time, we have to set standards. We have to set standards for, candidate experience. We have to measure net promoter score, NPS. We have to measure. You can't improve it if you don't measure it. And the more that we use AI and AI-ish stuff in parts of the process, number one, we have to inform people that it's happening. Plain and simple. Don't surprise me. I hate surprise. I love surprises, but not these kind of surprises.
Which sort of goes back to some of the things you were saying at the top of this about the fear of AI. I'm sure that's sort of commingled with
That's
this.
that's something. I mean, and again, it goes back to the 1A and 1B that I was talking about. The 1A is it's easy for job seekers to just throw shit across over the transom and hope. But what does that do? It just makes it, and an arbitrary number, anywhere between, I mean, not quite 100%, but a large number of people who apply for jobs, they're just not qualified. They can't solve the problems. There's no evidence of them. I can't say they can't. There's no evidence of them solving the problems that they're going to be hired to solve. That's the problem with that's the over. It's not that recruiting is broken. It's just that recruiting has not evolved to the point of thinking that recruiters have this innate ability to look at someone's resume and make some value judgment as to how well they could perform. There's nothing there. There's simply nothing there.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's like job applicants, and on the other side, recruiters are sort of participating in a same flawed system. It's sort of like the old line about the former Soviet Union. We pretend to work and they pretend to pay us. They're all complicit in supporting a deeply flawed system that everybody knows is flawed.
But the solution is easy. It's transparency.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, be transparent. Tell people, and none of this requires AI. It's like know the real job. Recruiters, please, when you're hiring, know the real job. Number two, once a year, look at your entire process and say, how can I improve it? How can I make it better? I mean, it's take inventory on your house once a year, and if you can find a way to eliminate a step, I mean, do that. I mean, measure stuff. If you're paying for a tool, and it's the dollars per hire on that are the lowest, why do you need that? I mean, do an inventory, clean your house up. You don't need AI for that. But then once you have your process cleaned up, then look at each step and determine, where am I where is the best use of my time spent? Here, and here. These other places, can we automate that? Where can we become more efficient on those pieces? So that gets compressed. That's just strategic planning. That's smart. And I think we're so used to the sweet seductive scent of AI and talent acquisition that we often miss, let's just fix the problem first. Putting technology on top of something is just automating stupidity if you don't fix the problem.
Yeah, again, the running title for the column in the newsletter that we do is Thinking AI, because the whole thing is that it needs to be thought through. You need to understand, what are the desired outcomes? What are you measuring? Do you need to think it through before you implement it? It needs to be a very intentional, deliberate process.
And Charles, it was no different when PCs came on board, no different when the internet came on board. We were there people fought tooth and nail against it. Okay, well, what can we do with it that will help us? It's not a broad brush everything. That doesn't make sense. But some things, sure. I wrote an article 8 years ago called, Artificially Stupid Recruiting. You can find it out there on the interwebs. And it, I was back then, I said, I have no problem, using AI and AI as tools for all facets of those jobs that are, highly repeatable and, don't really require, problem solving testing. It's, maybe, and this is going to come across as being bad, but certain roles, like warehouse laborers, seasonal worker stuff, in which you're doing high volume stuff, it just makes sense to me to automate as much of that as possible with AI and AI-ish tools. Just makes sense. For the roles that require, human leadership or problems, situational specific interactions, half and half, for lack of a better words, a little bit of human, a little bit of AI. But first and foremost, we have to make sure our structure is solid. That was one of my first engineering lessons in the University of Vermont in '76. Professor John Outwaters told this class, and I'm paraphrasing again, structure begets function. And that's about the foundation. Whatever foundation, whatever we build on top of for our house, if our foundation cannot support that, things can eventually collapse. So, if we get the process optimized, if we get the humans involved in the process, hire them to be inquisitive, to be self-learners. That's one of the biggest challenges. It's the fear is keeping so many people from self-learning about what they can and cannot do with these tools.
Mm-hmm.
I show people here at work things that you can do with ChatGPT, and it's not. The light bulb moment is not that. Wow, I never thought you could do that. It's how much time am I saving? That's where we are now. Will it get to the point where we'll have a complete, humanoid system? Absolutely. But there'll be other jobs that humans will do that, we'll be able to, use our brain, use our reasoning, use our wisdom, whatever that might end up being.
Right. Well, thank you for that Inherit the Wind inspired soliloquy.
Can't help it. It's just one of these things that,
I'm ready to march.
No. If I'm ready to march, speaking of which, and this is really off on a tangent, Martin Luther King, we all know that he's so, I had a dream speech, but that's not, I don't think that's anywhere near his best homily. He spoke at the Ebenezer Baptist Church a few months in Atlanta, I think, Georgia. February of the year he was assassinated. He knew he was going to be assassinated. He wrote something called the Drum Major Instinct. I'm not going to go through it, but the Drum Major Instinct is one. If you watch, the classic, really the HBCU marching bands, that's just a joy to watch. You have the drum major just leading the charge. They're out in front. They guide everybody, and they're guiding everybody towards some incredible goal where the audience is just going wild. So the drum major instinct is one in which you take the lead. You be your own self-learner. You be the person who's going to advocate for a better hiring process. Don't leave it up to others. The connection may be a little bit unfortunate right now, but for those who read this, go online, search for the Drum Major Instinct PDF. Read the speech. You'll be a better person for that. By the way, remember the 1A was a job seekers piece. The 1B was my side of the track. And that is, we are being bombarded by vendors pushing AI solutions for everything. I just encourage all my fellow people in TA to take a demo, try it, but then ask yourself, how is it really going to benefit me? Am I going to lose touch with the human beings, or maybe I can find a way to blend the two? It's don't get sucked in by that, seductive smell of technology. Be dubious, particularly in AI. Ask questions about it. Ask how the models were developed. Ask what data sets were used. Ask about how the system was programmed. There's bias, there's inherent bias in software development that we don't often talk about.
I've been talking to people these many years in this space about technology and how HR people, everybody within that sphere, tends to be cautious for a variety of reasons. Now, all of a sudden, we're talking about a very sophisticated analysis. You're bombarded by all of these vendors, AI inside, as you say. I wonder how many people on the purchaser side, the HR side, are sophisticated enough, given this history that I talk about, to go through that checklist.
HR is a funny thing. We have HR tech. I don't know when this is going to air.
By the way, you do one of the best thoughtful pauses of anybody I've ever interviewed, so I just want to give you a little shout out for that.
Well, I just think they're just mini strokes. We have HR tech coming up next week.
Yeah.
And I will be there. I'm going to get in trouble saying this.
Oh, but, no, we hey, look, we want to break news and create havoc here.
I'm okay with it. I once wrote a blog post called the Ethan Allen syndrome. And this is back 2011. That was during the time where HR people were clamoring to have a seat at the table. So I said, okay, so HR is all about furniture. For those who don't know, Ethan Allen is a furniture store here in the area, and Charles knows about it because he's probably won't stop laughing for a while. But HR people have as hard a job as those of us who run TA do. You're really caught between often a rock and a hard place. And Pew, I think it was Pew. No, it was Gallup did a poll last year, maybe Q1 2023, Q2. And I'm going to botch up the numbers here so people can please fact check me. CHROs were asked in the next year, what percentage of jobs do you feel are going to be impacted by AI? And I think there were like 16%. So over the next 3 years, how many of you think that a significant number of jobs are going to be eliminated? I think a number of like 72%. What caused that? Where is that coming from? I posit that the movement towards AI in organizations from an HR perspective is being driven by the CFO and the CEO, who see major. Look, I can see us reduce our G&A expenses by automating this or automating that. And companies point to Klarna, buy now pay later, BNPL, buy now pay later company, who are reducing a significant number of jobs. Okay, but which jobs? These are customer success, customer service type jobs. If you analyze the types of things that go into that, I worked for a BNPL company, I can see that happening. Than any of us who ever called a cable company. I would rather talk to an AI bot than somebody offshore. Not a question of bias, it's just a question of its speed, it's faster. So I think the numbers, CHRO is saying all these jobs are going to be replaced or changed over the next 3 years. It's not like they've all of a sudden acquired some knowledge about what will happen. I just think they're parroting back what their CEOs and CFOs are telling them they want to see. I think that the best thing we can do for organizations is to educate ourselves on what things can and cannot do. Experiment, play, survey our people. Don't just take the word of the CFO saying, well, we have to reduce our G&A by 25% over the next quarter. So, cut people and replace them with technology. The tech spend is a different part of the balance sheet. So I'm expecting at HR Tech, every vendor there is going to be talking about something AI. I'm going to be there with Dice and I'm going to be talking about it also. but I'm going to be talking about humanity because, if companies lose their humanity, you lose their brand. That's my
Yeah,
line, and I'm sticking to
it's
it.
interesting. We somewhat flippantly, but not entirely, referred to AI inside, echoing the Intel. I've
Yeah.
always thought that at some point, companies are going to be able to boast X amount of employees inside as sort of an expression of your brand. Particularly, this new cohort, younger people coming up. Obviously, it's important to them to do business, to buy things from companies that are good corporate citizens and so forth. So I wonder, like some companies want to boast about being a best places to work.
DHI, we are one of the great places to work. I've been here now 3.5 months, and I like every. This is great. I can talk to any executive. I might be different since I'm at the age where I don't give a flap, so I'll talk to anybody as a human being. But if you say it, mean it. Do what you say. It's what was it, Dr. Seuss? I meant what I said. I said what I meant. An elephant faithful 100%. People clamor. They clamor for humanity, but many of them just don't feel as if they have a voice in that anymore. It's AI. Fine. We need technology. Technology has driven us forward to places we never thought we'd get to. We need it, but never abandon the human element as you're doing it. That's not a hard concept. Don't become a fan of a technology because it's cool. You have to think of the implications, aware of them, mitigate as much as possible. But at the same time, don't shy away from it. Don't do it because you're scared of it.
Again, when we spoke, we talked about in a previous conversation different so-called paradigm shifts.
Yeah.
And how, I don't know if this is your coinage or this is from someplace else. You said that there are different groups in society who react differently to these shifts. They're the enthusiastic early adopters, the cautious middle, the hesitant bottom third.
Yeah.
I kind of have a sense where you're at, but if you would, where exactly would you say you're at? And where would you say most of the people you speak with in the industry are at?
For me, I'm an engineer till the day I die. It's just how I'm wired. Grew up during the Cold War, learned to use tools at a very, very young age, thanks to my dad. Built things, destroyed things, took things apart, put them back together again. So I like seeing how things work. I'm also a tinkerer, and I don't take anybody's word for. I'm a skeptic, and so I am going to, from any vendor that says they have AI, I'm gonna grill them. There's a movement within TA tech industry, and my friend Jerry Crispin is the person behind it. It's about transparency in products and platforms. This is the tool. This is our LLM. This is what we're using. This is our data set. This is what we're using it for. This is what we're not using it for. That's sort of radical transparency, and I call it radical transparency in the same vein as we talk about radical candor. Because the fact that you're honest about your have to refer to as radical, it means there's certainly something wrong in technology these days, or with companies these days. That's an easy problem to fix. I like it. But I'm a skeptic. I'm going to try things. I'm not going to take somebody else's word for it. I play with different LLMs. I play with different platforms. I try different prompts. I look at data. I look at when companies put out surveys about what their product can do. I look at the methodology, and if it's not there, I get the methodology. And I want to know the structure that's being built, I want to know what kind of steel it is. I want to know, where it was sourced from. I want to know those things. That's me.
Right.
So I am all for anything that improves candidate experience. It improves, talent acquisition effectiveness. Anything that improves a company's brand. Because whomever I work for, I want them to make as much money as possible. And you're not going to do that through lying.
Right.
And I think the bulk, I was one who talked about the thirds. I put myself as in that upper third, and we're all pretty much the same. We try things, we talk about it. We're not afraid to offer a negative opinion to a vendor. Not just for the sake of being negative, but let's say, look, I'm offering you this as my opinion. Would you like my advice in helping you solve it or improving it? Then there's the middle section. They're not really sure which way they could go. They could easily, with the right coaching and mentorship, and they can get into that upper third. Some people in the bottom half of the upper third, they may get tired and drop into that middle. I don't care. I'll use whatever's given to me. The bottom third are the ones who are scared. They're scared that their job's going to be replaced. And that how are they going to make a living? That's not a technology problem. That's an inside the head problem.
Mm-hmm.
And that's might be the hardest problem to solve.
Right. Right.
And that's where those at the top, we have to take care of the people who are coming up below us. That might be, Charles, you and I being of that era, we took care of that. We took care of our parents. We took care of our grandparents. We took care of, our siblings who just couldn't do it by themselves. We just did that. So in order for this to become really effective, AI to become really effective, we actually have to be more human. So others don't fall by the wayside. And it's very Sisyphean, because there's always going to be people who are sliding down that hill.
Right.
And, what are you willing to do to, once you get to the top, to go down and help others, get up to the top, or at least make movement, at least to the point where they can do it on their own. That's the one thing that every paradigm shift, every era, from, fire, industrial, post-industrial, technological, the people who are thought of the most are not the ones who, in the best light, are not the ones who are the richest, but are the ones who are the most human and compassionate. I want to be in that group. And my friends do too.
Excellent words. Thanks so much, Steve. Really appreciate your time, your thoughts, your insights, and ultimately your positivity. We need well-grounded, reasoned positivity. Before I let you go, a couple things. Mm-hmm. You mentioned AI and Sopranos, and I said, hold that thought. When I first started kicking the tires with ChatGPT, I threw a whole lot of crazy prompts at it. And one was, imagine that Tony Soprano leaving the mob, his pals at the Buddha Bang are not real happy about this, and he's applying for a job at a car dealership. So I threw a whole bunch of prompts, and I created this whole scene. And they weren't going to let him go. There were some problems. So that was kind of funny and fun. And that was kind of interesting also. Very early days, I was throwing these fun things at ChatGPT, but it really gave me a very good early sense. That's kind of interesting. The new version, I think, just came out, and you talk about transparency. One of the interesting features about the new version of Chat is that it sort of shows you its work, how it came to its reasoning, which is kind of fascinating. But
well, actually, on that note, if you can bear with me, I'll get right this. Let's see if this prompt works. My prompt was voice of Tony Soprano. Oh man. And the prompt was, this is what ChatGPT came up with. Hey, I'm Tony. I have to do this voice. I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead. It's
Said,
okay.
Hi, hey, I'm Tony Soprano, and I'm interested in the car salesman job of your dealership in Hoboken. Let me cut to the chase. I know how to move product. I understand people, and I get results. I've been around North Jersey my whole life, and I know the type of people who walk through your doors. I know how to talk to them, how to build trust, and how to close a deal that works for both sides. I've always been good at handling business. And cars, well, let's just say I've been around them long enough to know what makes a good ride and what doesn't. If you want someone who can get in there and make things happen, I'm your guy. Let's talk soon to see how we can make this work.
Well, you sold it.
Tony Soprano.
Hey, Steve, you sold it. Very nice.
There are some very important uses of ChatGPT.
Well, we also really put your so-called acting chops to the test today. You did the dramatic rendition of Inherit the Wind. Now this.
Charles. When I present at conferences now, I've been doing this long enough that, my slides, my deck, it's full. I do not go into conference talks practicing. I want to feel that I look at the audience, I meet them ahead of time, I look out on them, and I just tell stories. I wasn't always like that. Yeah, but that's like all of us. I wasn't always like that. You
have to acquire a little bit of experience to have stories, first of all.
Yeah, but you also have to change. I was an arrogant son of it when I was younger. I don't know if I would have liked me when I was younger. But, life takes hold of you, and, to the extent that you're willing to listen. And sometimes it takes longer to listen to some people who are really important to you. Your change, but everyone goes through this. If you live life on the edge, the years I spent lifeguarding and saving lives, and there was an aggressiveness to being a first responder. And for those who don't know Jones Beach, Charles, it's wild. The waves are not small. The people who go there can't swim. Yes, they get sucked out, and yes, we got fishies and everything. But that mentality, it's not necessarily conducive with everything. And so that had to change in me through the years. So thankful to all the people who helped me get there by smacking me.
Yeah, no, I've often said, the line, if today's me could sit down with the 18, 25-year-old me, but that version of me would not listen to this version.
No, absolutely not.
We have correct. Absolutely nothing to talk about.
None. Oh, well. We do now.
Now, and we have our stories.
Yes,
the other thing, by the way, again, not to leave something unanswered. I mentioned that when I lived in Wantaw, I would say that there were three things. And one of those things is that it's the final resting place of the most famous canine in American presidential history. Who would your guess be, Mr. Levy?
I mean, it has to be Lassie is the only one that comes to mind for me.
Canine, American presidential history.
Who had a dog? Well, it had to be Teddy Roosevelt's, I would think.
It is Checkers Nixon. The famous Checkers speech. He's actually buried in a Bidewee cemetery off of a nature walk.
And we have the tape to prove it. Oh no, that tape.
A friend of mine, I have been telling this story for years and years and years, to the point where I'm like, is this urban legend, or is that the
Bidewee right by North Shore Animal Shelter?
Could well be. I mean,
there's a road from Port Washington, and I know heading south on the right side there's a little place.
No, a friend of mine actually was there, and I don't see it. I don't see any marker. I said, hold on a second. So after all these years of telling this story and never really taking great pains to verify it, I finally did verify it. Thankfully, he's in fact, or she, I'm assuming it's a he. Checkers sounds like a masculine name. Chess Nixon would definitely be, I think, a masculine name. but I don't know.
Okay. Well, that's good to
I'm
know.
just speculating.
I've come out of this talk smarter than when I went in.
Well, I hope that's the case. Same here, but so, and by the way, speaking of that, I really do appreciate you giving this conversation a literary bent. We talk about Inherit the Wind, Norman Mailer, Philip Roth, Dr.
Gosh.
Seuss. Anyway, Steve, again, fellow Long Islander, really do appreciate spending time. I've been looking forward to this, and thanks as always for bringing the A game, man.
You're very, very welcome, Charles. And if you need me again, just ask.
I think I might. I mean, because things are just so fluid. A conversation a little bit down the road, 3 months, 6 months may
You never know.
be different.
You never know. You never know.
Never know. Only the shadow knows. Anyway, Steve, again, thanks so much. Today I spoke with Steve Levy, Principal Talent Advisor at DHI Group. We spoke about how can we ensure that AI doesn't leave a body count in its wake.
And the answer is be more human.
Be more human. Thank you, Steve.
You're welcome, Charles.
This is Charles Epstein for the X Factor podcast. Thanks for listening.